Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Point, Online Ordering and Delivery, How to Boost Margins and Customer Data. Stop managing disjointed systems and start driving revenue. I'm Abby Lorden, publisher of Hospitality Technology Magazine and co-founder of the Restaurant Technology Network. And I want to say first thank you to Paytronix as the sponsor of today's episode of The Point. Paytronix, as an access company, is a leader in guest engagement for restaurants and convenience stores. For more than 20 years, they have helped leading brands leverage the Paytronix guest engagement suite to create personalized, seamless experiences to reach and delight their guests through loyalty programs, advanced messaging, online ordering, and mobile interactions. So thank you, Paytronix, for making today's web seminar possible. I want to welcome to the panel my colleague, friend, and today's subject matter expert in the world of online ordering and delivery. Please welcome Chris Incorvati, who is the Chief Technology Officer with Jax Family Restaurants. Chris, welcome to The Point.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, Chris, thrilled to have you here. I'd love to start with just tell us a little bit about Jax, right? How many locations? If you give us a little bit of an overview into the technology stack with respect to your online and ordering portfolio.
Sure. So Jax is a corporate-owned restaurant group, no franchisees. We have about 285 restaurants. We'll be close to 300 by the end of the year, mostly in the South, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi primarily. We're just broke into Arkansas this year, and we're going to be in Tallahassee, Florida pretty soon. So we're really excited about the growth we're having. We're a high-volume breakfast business, but also lunch and dinner as we open at like 4 a.m. very early. We have biscuits. We claim to have the official biscuit of the South. I'm very proud of that. For tech stack, we're just moving into some evolved technology. We recently upgraded our systems and rolled out PowerBrank. And we're also using Punch Loyalty and currently transitioning to Olo for online digital ordering.
Great. Okay, so we're going to get into all of that. Congrats on the growth that you have planned in the year ahead. That's really exciting. And the Best Biscuit is a tough title to win, so congrats on that as well. So the theme today for our discussion is online ordering and delivery, how to boost margins and customer data. From your seat in Jax, what is the biggest hurdle to achieving both of those goals simultaneously?
Yeah, so I think the biggest hurdle is getting the data right. You look at third party and really where it is in the marketplace, and it's really, you got to look at them as demand generators. And the marketplaces are really an extension of marketing spend, right? You're reaching a guest that you might not have been able to reach otherwise. And so you have to look at it that way and then try to convert them so that you're able to get them to first party. So you're able to save some money because it can get very expensive. So the key to being able to do that is to, parse customer data appropriately, identify behavioral patterns, and then convert insights into targets so you can actually make sure you're making a lifetime customer and getting them. And once you have them, then hopefully you're able to maintain them in that first party and keep getting their orders.
Yeah, I think that's such an important distinction, right? Rather than seeing them as the means to the transaction, it's really the means to develop a relationship with a guest, right? And if we start thinking about it in that means and in that method, we can identify the strengths of working with our third party, but have a bigger picture, longer strategy in mind. So let's talk a little bit about that, native versus third party. You prioritize your own white label app versus web ordering, correct?
Of course, yeah.
Oh, okay, so tell us a little bit about your integration strategy and how you help steer guests towards that native channel instead of the third party app.
Sure. So we rely on a tight integration between our point of sale and loyalty programs, which gives us visibility into guest behavior, and we're able to identify patterns, right? That visibility allows us to personalize offers and experiences. Once a guest transitions to first party, we're able to kind of customize and know how often they're coming and be able to make sure we're maintaining their loyalty. With third party, you're limited, right? The third party platforms own the guest account, the email, the behaviors, the relationship. So it's a twofold strategy for us. We stitch together the data whenever possible: phone number, email patterns, survey responses, and we create incentives. Loyalty offers exclusive perks, targeted rewards, so you're able to capture that guest. And then, like I said before, kind of keep them involved, because once we get them on our platform, we're hoping they're getting a better experience with more hospitality from us that it really is individualized towards that person so they get what they want and really try to keep them happy.
Yeah, that incentivization piece. It's interesting. We observed this trend hit the lodging industry. It's been decades, right? When the world of OTAs entered the lodging industry, and hotels had to figure out how to put their inventory on those aggregate sites while still maintaining a direct relationship. And it took a while before they could start to figure out how to maintain that, how to establish and reestablish that direct relationship with the guest. I call that out because I think it's a great industry to learn from, right? It's something that's adjacent, an industry that has already achieved this, and go study hotel websites and look at how are they incentivizing those direct relationships, and where can we learn from some of the lessons that they've already had to cut their teeth on, because it's such an incredible parallel between how the OTAs have evolved in the lodging industry and what we're seeing with third party in the restaurant space. Let's talk a bit about pricing and menu strategy, right? That's one of the key ways that we can earn and recapture direct orders. Talk to me a little bit about the technology that you are using to help protect the price point and your margins when your third-party partners, those delivery partners, are putting pressure on the P&L. So let's talk a little bit about the pricing strategy overall.
Yeah, so I mean, third-party commissions range anywhere from 15 to 30%, and that's significant. And it can be very costly depending on the type of food you have or what your brand is offering. So to understand your own margin structure is really important. So to have good food costs in place and understand exactly what you're selling and what channel and how to market that directly. A high margin category like pizza, for example, right? That may have more profitability, and people may be able to expend and spend a little bit more because they can tolerate that commission exchange for more traffic. Other brands might not have that flexibility, so that's really hard. There's also algorithm pressure from the aggregators, right? They want you to spend or not charge as much so that people come back to the third-party marketplace to keep ordering. And so their algorithms sometimes will choose those restaurants that have better pricing for their customers so that they keep choosing them. So there's that too. So you have to be careful not to, place yourself too high of a price where you're pricing yourself out of competition. So channel-based pricing controls, margin visibility by order source, and then targeted first-party incentives, like we've talked about, are really key to making sure that you're, marketing to the right people and able to get that reach across. Using first-party profitability and retention is really where it's at. But I think you can't forget that you've got to look at third party as a really strong marketing tool to a bunch of people that you wouldn't have necessarily been able to capture otherwise. And once you get them, then it's just retaining them. That's the whole goal of the game.
Yeah. I want to chat a little bit about the data capture side of things now, and how integrating the point of sale at Jax within the loyalty stack that you have through Punch, how has that changed the way that you are able to make decisions at Jax?
It allows us to market more intelligently. We can now see that what products drive repeat visits. We're able to see what offers resonate, and then how a behavior varies by segment. While it might not directly, help us make changes all the time or understand the decisions that we have to make, it can influence certain things that we can help to drive. But combining POS data and loyalty has been huge for us. And then also, we look at guest surveys, right? And understand how happy the guest is. Then we're able to target those guests for return visits and get them to sign up to loyalty by giving them a really aggressive offers. We look at social channel behavior and understand, are people more on social? Are people more going to marketplace? Are people more going first party? What are those things that we have to try to drive traffic, and how do we get them in? And then we're looking at creating those individualized guest experiences that ultimately drives more loyalty to the brand, right? We have a great brand following here at Jax. It's really awesome.
Yeah, I'm curious to know if it surprised you, any of the products that were driving repeat visits, right? Did any of the data, now that you have access to it in a different way, was any of that a surprise to the team?
Yeah, I think, some of the product that we sell, you wouldn't expect. So we just tried last year for the first time bone-in chicken wings, for example, right? And it exploded for us, so much so that we had trouble keeping up with the product. And just recently we launched a catfish promotion that in test did okay. And we thought it was going to be, and it exploded. We did 4 times what we expected, which was phenomenal. So when we look at that data and understand it now for future, we're a little bit more prepared to understand how to prepare for LTOs and what we can do to target our guests. And we've been very successful. I'd almost say sometimes too successful in our marketing campaigns, which has helped us grow. It's one of the reasons that Jax is doing so well today.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I want to just do a quick call out for our audience. As you're listening to Chris and I chat, we're talking about online ordering, we're talking about optimizing it, we're talking about margins and profitability. If you have questions for Chris, we do have a Q&A feature towards the bottom of your screen. You can go ahead and type any questions that you have in there. And if we have time, I have a lot more for Chris, but if we have time before we wrap up, I'll be able to get some of those questions in. So if you have anything you want to ask Chris, go ahead and use that Q&A feature towards the bottom of your screen. Okay, let's talk about the product that Jax is really known for, and in particular, the breakfast business. You have habitual breakfast guests at Jax, and that's a habit-driven business. How are you using integrated order history to identify your regulars and then continue to target them to make sure that you are part of their morning routine?
Yeah, so like you said, breakfast is one of the most routine-driven day parts, right? I mean, coffee alone is deeply habitual. If I don't have my coffee, it's going to be a miserable day for me. So I think, we monitor frequent guest visits and look for lapses, and we try to understand why our guests wouldn't come back or what are the things we're doing that are successful, and really try to target those. So we keep popular items in rotation, reinforce core favorites, and use targeted offers to, protect that routine behavior. In breakfast, consistency and predictability matters as much as innovation. The goal is to just defend the habit in that sense, but we're always innovating, and so we're always looking to see what we can do to make the guest experience better.
Let's talk a little bit about the POS migration. You mentioned that you are transitioning to Olo. Can you talk a little bit about that decision and what in particular are some of the outcomes that you are looking to achieve with that transition?
Yeah, so the move is heavily driven by, we just want to have a simplified ordering experience for our guests. We think that as we're growing, Olo is a great platform for us to utilize. Well known in the marketplace, heavily integrated with our platforms we're using currently today. We feel like we're going to be able to get a simplified mobile and web experience, cleaner integration, fewer injection failures, and then we also get the great product suite of offerings that they have within the software platform that help us to do more for our guests. It also helps us in the kitchen, believe it or not, too, because you think of things like order throttling, realistic make times, catering support, and reduction of like the kitchen, because overwhelming orders, right? We can control that a little bit. The kitchen, you think about the operators too, right? This isn't just the guest experience, but it all stems together. So when we have a great experience that flows through from the app, it's not where it finishes. It still has to go and the order has to be prepared, put together, and then it has to be ready for the guests on time. So making sure that that flow is really great is something that we're excited about. We think it'll really help us. It's really protecting the execution in the store.
The decision to move to Olo is very much in line with an industry trend that we're seeing at Hospitality Technology with respect to some just general transition in the POS marketplace. We just conducted our point of sale software study, and we released that data just at the start of the new year. And we found that more than 40% of restaurants were actually looking for a new point of sale supplier in 2026. That's the highest number I've ever seen in the decades that I've been covering this industry. So hearing you say that you are among those group, I think it's really insightful to know here's evidence of it, right? And the point of sale study, for anybody that's interested in seeing a little bit more about that, we have that on Hospitality Technology Magazine. You can get in there and check that out and learn a little bit more about what's driving some of those decisions and what some of the most in-demand features are. And I'm going to bet that order cleanliness is a big part of it, Chris, as well. Let's talk a little bit about the cost of fragmentation. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. We founded the Restaurant Technology Network to help provide a space for technology companies and restaurant organizations to come together and identify places where standardization would lift all boats and make it more attainable to innovate and move faster and have it less to do with things that really don't create any competitive differentiation, but are just like, let's just agree on what transactional data should look like, right? Let's have a similarity in how transactional data should flow through the restaurant. So this notion of fragmentation and the cost of it is something that we care a lot about at Mertech and hospitality technology. I am really interested to get your take as someone who's been, you've led many different technology organizations across different restaurant brands. What's that moment or data point when the CTO can look at what's going on in their space and say, our legacy technology is no longer just a nuisance, it is actually impacting our revenue?
Yeah, I mean, it's just not one moment. It's a pattern, really. You kind of like see these things starting to happen, right? And you realize it's time to evolve, right? If you're pulling data from multiple systems, you're seeing people manipulate the data because they're trying to tell the story, and you're reporting with caveats, right? We think it's roughly X, but that's not good enough. You need to be in a factual space and understand what your data is. If you see the stores manipulating things, or like if they're having trouble tying out orders or having to cancel and re-enter them, I think these are all things that are causing challenges for everyone across the board. And then it becomes reconciliation nightmare, right? And you're working to figure out where's the leakage, and by then it's already started. So I think, fragmentation stops being an inconvenience and it starts to erode trust, right? And then that impacts speed and accuracy and the guest experience overall. So it's kind of like these red flags that start kind of showing up, and you've got to be able to identify them ahead of time so you're on top to make sure that you're moving forward. But I think that as technology evolves, you start to see a pattern of things that come into play, and it becomes easier to recognize over time. I've been doing this for way too long, but I love it. It's it's part of the restaurant industry, and you start to see these things as things happen.
Yeah, I think that perspective is really important, right? To recognize that it's pattern based, and I'm sure there are restaurant brands, individuals who they may know in their gut that the pattern is there, right? But the challenge associated with change can sometimes feel like it's insurmountable and can prevent you from making the necessary changes. You mentioned leakage. Where do you see the most leakage, right? What would be some of those areas where, if you haven't looked in the mirror and identified the pattern and said, this is starting to impact our revenue or our performance, what are some of the areas, right? Are we talking about a fragmented guest experience? Do you think it's going to come out in labor hours? Do you think it's going to come out in accuracy of data? What's sort of the leakage tells, if you will?
Yeah, I think it impacts all those areas you just mentioned for sure. But I think the biggest area, I think, is reconciliation to start, because you start to see these patterns of things that are hard to identify, right? Like margins are eroded. You see that accuracy is questioned, trust erodes. Finance spends a long time trying to reconcile to the P&L or the GL and can't get the numbers right. They're like, why isn't this working? And so that's really the part, I think, that it's really difficult when you tie things out. If you think about all the different pieces, especially across multiple systems, you've got, tax rules. And if you're in multiple states, the taxes can be different, discounting, the way that works. If the third party, if you're using, an aggregator, they have certain promotions that are only available on those sites. So when they come across, are they calculating properly? Future orders, do they hit the POS in a time that works? And then does it account for the right business date when that happens? Fraud happens, people's information unfortunately gets stolen. And then if that happens, how do you reconcile that? Or if there's fraud within, within the third party or first party, for example, if that happens, how do you reconcile that? Canceled or mismatched orders, consistently, are you able to account for those, and how do you deal with that? And it's a challenge. So I think that's really the piece that's hardest, is the data and making sure that it ties out. Both labor waste and guest friction matter a ton. It's very important. Obviously, you need to have repeat guests, but broken reconciliation damages the foundation, and you need to have trust in your systems, because the operators need to trust their numbers too, right? They make their money. They're bonusing off some of these metrics, I'm sure, in multiple brands. And if it's not accurate, they can't trust them. They don't have the buy-in.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about then, an operator has identified that they've reached that critical point in time, right? They know that they're among the 44% who are making major changes to technology this year, or whatever their moment, their big aha moment was. I'd love to get your take on first practical steps, right? Are you thinking like total rip and replacement point of sale? Are you talking about middleware bridges that can kind of help you step your way through it? What's your guidance to a restaurant that has identified that they need to start addressing this?
Yeah, I think the first place is really with data, right? You've got to understand, you need that single source of truth, one place where leadership can see all the reporting together, and then, make sure that they're aligned on the numbers, right? If there's multiple places feeding data and you're not sure and it's inaccurate and you can't tie stuff out, I know this has been a little bit of a theme here, but it really is true. It's really important. And, centralizing that data environment with clear definitions, clean ingestion, and then, looking for, I know some companies might not be able to afford, especially smaller groups, a CDP, customer, a data platform where you use that customer data, but at least having it in one spot for now. And then you start to look at point of sale, because that is the brains, that's the operation of the restaurant within the four walls. And you try to evaluate what's best there and then evaluate the middleware. I think those are the three things, but in that order, I would start with data first, because data clarity is what kind of drives the metrics of the business and understanding how you're going to make changes and helps drive operational decision, right, about go forward. So I think that's the place you start.
Yeah, and I would say I'm going to yes and Chris and say if you're starting on this journey, also turn to the Restaurant Technology Network membership community for restaurants. All of the standards work that the members have created is readily accessible on the RTN website. All the standards that we've created, and even all the way down to like sample transactional messages. But I call that out because you mentioned the CDP, and the membership within RTN has actually created a customer data profile standard, right? So to start to standardize that. So there are tools out there that can help you as you're having conversations with suppliers, as you're starting to think about RFP, to move towards a more standardized operating environment. And RTN is a great, like, open to the market. Restaurant operators can get in there and peek under the hood and start utilizing those resources. So let's talk a little bit about, I'd love to ask you to reflect a little bit on, prior to Jax, you were with Panera. You had a great run with Panera, and were part of an operating environment there where you had a lot of custom, fully homegrown technology tools. What do you say has been an advantage of moving to an integrated enterprise stack at Jax from what you were used to working on at Panera?
Sure. So I think Panera was fun. It was at its peak. We had a massive team, 400 to 500 people, I think, in IT alone, which was very different. But we had everything in house, right? All of our systems were custom built. It was really a great opportunity to learn so much more about how you can impact the guests from just being yourselves. It helped us move at a speed and a pace which most restaurants weren't able to do that, especially during COVID. We did some things that, like, we sold groceries. Like, it was very different. But the biggest lesson from there was probably the value of customer data and understanding they had one of the largest customer loyalty programs in the country. And so they were able to really target. And then coming here to Jax, I think the one thing that's been really great is that using an integrated stack, you get the best technology that's innovating at a pace that's much easier, right? When I was at Panera, we had to, at one point, we were probably ahead of the curve, but to maintain or to get ahead was really hard because we weren't always looking outside the four walls to understand what's next in the point of sale world, what's next in third party. We were trying to evaluate what we had internally and make what's best for us. But when you're working with a third party vendor, they're trying to, like, put out all these different new innovative ideas that will work for multiple brands. And they're trying to sell that, maintain those guest relationships. So for us, we get all these new tools and they're regularly updated and innovative. And I think that is an advantage. So we're able to use some great software that's constantly evolving, and it gives us newer features faster. And we're able to avoid the challenges of custom code and having to develop that on our own. So we may work a little harder because we're a smaller organization, but we can leverage the best-in-class software without having to reinvent ourselves.
Every Windows patch update doesn't cause massive chaos in your tech stack. That's somebody else's problem to deal with when you have the type of stack built that you guys have. So that's pretty cool. Well, this has been a really fun conversation, Chris. I've loved tackling this topic with you here today, talking about online ordering and margins and native orders and so forth. I want to give a shout out. Chris is also going to be joining us on our agenda. We're going to be doing Great Education at MERTEC, which is coming up March 9th, 10th, and 11th in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace. If you have not registered, you still can. So go ahead to mertec.com and you can see all the great content that's going to be on that agenda. And then Chris is going to be helping us with a session there on smarter kitchens and less waste, how AI is transforming food efficiency. Chris, you're like an expert on so many different topics. I love that we're going to pull you in for that conversation in just a couple weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you again to Paytronix for their support in helping make this episode of The Point possible. Thank you to Chris Incorvati, CTO with Jax Family Restaurants. I am Abigail Lorden with Hospitality Technology Magazine, and we will see you for next month's episode of The Point. Thank you.